Hi, everybody. I'm Grant Cunningham, and welcome to Training Talk right here on Personal Defense Network. This is the show where we talk about you, about your life, and how to protect it. In the next hour, we'll explore how you can prepare and equip for that worst case scenario and to keep you and your family safe from harm. Now, I guarantee you're going to be happy after this week that we don't do politics on the show and we don't do religion either. You won't hear conspiracy theories or fringe commentary, just reliable information that you can put to use right now. It's the reasonable and responsible approach to self-defense and personal security, and I hope that you enjoy it. Hey, if you do like what we're doing here, if you like this new and different approach to talking about self-defense, would you do me a favor? Share this with your family, your friends, your coworkers, your social media contacts, the folks on Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest and all those places. I'd sure appreciate it. And, I think they will too. I think they'll appreciate that you thought enough of them to share this kind of information with them. So thanks for tuning in tonight. We have a fun show tonight. This is the second show of the month. This is the second Thursday of July. And on the second show of the month, we generally try to catch up on questions that have been asked and things that have come in the last month. And so we're going to be covering a lot of that today, a lot of questions that came in on email, some that came in on Facebook. And so we'll try to cover as many of those as I can. In the second half of the hour, we're going to have Rob Pincus, the executive director here at Personal Defense Network, on to talk about the training tour tomorrow, and I think it's tomorrow, is the official end of the 2016, isn't it? The 2016 spring training tour that Personal Defense Network does every year, and tomorrow's the last day of the last class of the tour, so Rob's going to be on to sort of wrap that up and hopefully talk about some other things too. And if you've seen Rob on the show, you know that he's always got something to talk about. So I'm sure we'll have a great time. In the meantime, in the first half of the hour, we're going to talk a little bit about how to deal with the police. If you're stopped by the police, say a traffic stop, when you're carrying your legally carried concealed weapon. And a lot of concern about that right now. We got a question about clothes to wear at the range, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about prescription shooting glasses, and we had an interesting question about his and hers guns, and I'll tell you about that a little later. So before we get to that though, and I want to give a big thanks again. If you turned into the show last week and you saw our guest Joshua Gideon, this is the water bottle that Joshua gave me, the original tactical hippie water bottle, which I'm going to be using tonight because my throat's a little parched. That's better. And it's actually been, I live in the Pacific Northwest, and it's actually been relatively cool for this time of year. I know that's not the case with everybody else around the country. I understand it's been very hot all over the rest of the country. I hope you're keeping cool. I hope you're hydrating a lot, or just drinking a lot of water, a lot of fruit juices, that kind of thing. Keep yourself well hydrated and prevent heat-related deaths and of course sicknesses, because they can be damaging. I've been hospitalized twice for severe dehydration, and believe me, I know what it is, and it's not a lot of fun. Anyway, so we've got a lot of stuff going on this week. Of course, it's and like I said at the opening, you're probably glad that we don't talk about politics on this program. What a crazy week, huh? And we've had, of course, all the political stuff going on. We've had some police officers ambushed and shot at and shot. Some have lost their lives. It's been just not a really great couple of weeks since the last time we were here. And I hope that we'll talk a little bit tonight about some of the interaction with police and some of the other things that have come up in conversation since these news reports have come out. So stick around, stay tuned, and we'll get right into that. Now, I want to start a rant. I'm going to do Grant's rant. And this happens every time that there's an attack of some sort, a public attack someplace in the country, or in this particular case around the world. And of course, we saw the attack with the semi-truck in France just this last week, and where it killed a lot of people. And of course, the first thing I see all over social media and in some of the commentary from some, quite frankly, from some people who really should know better, that, oh my gosh, these things are happening more and more often. We need to do special preparations for these things. We need to do all kinds of stuff. People have contacted me asking, for instance, gosh, should I carry a .308 rifle in my car just in case we have one of these attacks? And all kinds of stuff like this. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just for a minute, take a deep breath. Okay, let's talk about this. The fact is that while certainly mass casualty attacks, terrorist attacks seem to be on the rise, they're still relatively uncommon, particularly in this country. The fact is, your risk, my risk of being a victim of a terrorist attack have not increased substantially in the last couple of weeks. Has there been a slight increase? Certainly. Is it something that we need to get all panicky about and completely change our lifestyles and completely change how we train and everything else? No, I really don't think so. You know, it's easy to focus on things when the media is paying attention to them. Think about it this way. If the media came out tomorrow and reported on an attack and a death from a monitor lizard, you know what the monitor lizards are, those gigantic prehistoric looking things. If someone got attacked by one tomorrow and got killed, of course, you would see it all over the news. It would be very, very newsworthy. And somebody at some point would say, monitor lizard attacks have increased 100% in the last 6 months. Well, yeah, that means there was one. And so it's very easy to get sort of sucked into a panic because something that is relatively uncommon to begin with happened. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be cognizant of where you're going in public, of what you're doing in public, of the things that are going on in public. I'm not saying that at all. I think you should. But I think sort of jumping off the deep end and abandoning all of the things that you're doing for your own personal protection and personal preparedness and family and home defense, don't sort of jump from that and go right into the fire to prepare for some all-out terrorist attack. The dangers that you face today are the same ones you faced yesterday, and they still require some amount of attention. If we kind of zoom out, right, to the like 50,000 foot level and look at all the things that can do us harm, that can kill us, or result in being crippled or hospitalized for a long period of time, there's a whole lot of stuff. There are a lot of people probably watching the show or maybe watching the recording who are severely overweight and have high blood pressure. That's a sure killer. There are a lot of folks, and I don't want to cast aspersions on anyone's lifestyle choices. That's not my intention. But we have to be aware that there are some things that we choose to do which are dangerous for us. Smoking certainly is that way. Driving too fast while texting is certainly that way. All of these things that can harm us are the same things that could harm us last week and the same things that will harm us this week. And then, of course, we get down to the criminal attacks, the muggings, the carjackings, that kind of thing that we prepare for. We have rational preparation for. Things like even maybe learning how to swim. If you live near water, maybe that's a good thing to do if you haven't done that yet. So keep everything in perspective. Yes, terrorist attacks happen. They've happened on our own soil. Are they increasing in frequency? Yeah, there's a lot of debate about that. Are there some things that perhaps you should take into account? Well, certainly. Certainly be more aware of what's going on around you when you're out in public. Perhaps reading a good book on profiling and getting baseline profiles. Like there's a great book out right now called Left of Bang. And I don't remember the author's name. My apologies to him. I've read it a couple of times now. And it talks about establishing baselines when you're out in public and what to look for and what to expect. maybe maybe getting a copy of that book and reading it instead of deciding how many hundreds of rounds for your 308 rifle you need to store in your trunk. I think that's a more rational, sane way to prepare. Just my thought. All right, let me talk a little bit about well, that's kind of a downer, isn't it? Yeah, I agree it is. Let's talk, though, for just a minute about the PDN newsletter. Now, you've heard me talk about this before, and I want to talk about it again because the PDN newsletter is a great free resource to help you prepare rationally for those things I was just talking about. Lots of stuff in the PDN newsletter, but not just stuff about how to shoot in self-defense, but things like how to observe the goings-ons around you, how to baseline things so that you can predict perhaps what's going on around you. Things about getting in shape, about staying in shape, about medical care. All of these things you'll find in the PDN newsletter, and it comes out free every week, and it's a tremendous resource. I want to go ahead and show this to you just so that you can, see how this works. I'm going to screen share this for just a minute here. We're going to go to the PDN website here. We're going to start the screen share, and there we go. And here we are. And if you get on the PDN website and you stay on there for any length of time, sooner or later this is going to pop up. Stay connected. There are about over 300,000 people that are subscribed to the newsletter now, getting all this great information. You can be one of them. Sign up. It's free. It's easy to get on. It's easy to get off. If you click that and it goes away and you decide later, there's some really great stuff on this site. I'd really like to get more information. All over the site, there's one, stay connected. Sign up for our newsletter right there. You just type in your email address. Go down to the bottom. There's another stay connected. Just put in your email address and you can get the PDN newsletter free in your mailbox. I use it to keep track of some of the great shows that are coming up on PDN, not just my show, but Rob Pincus does a great live show once a month where he takes viewer questions. And it's a great show. I never miss that. And I rely on the PDN newsletter to tell me that it's coming up. So sign up for that. Like I say, completely free, easy to get on, easy to get off. And I think you will enjoy it. There's, like I said, lots of great free information there. All right. So there was a question that came up. If you've been following the news, you know about the situation back east. Fellow was stopped while carrying a concealed weapon, and we're not entirely sure what happened. I haven't seen all of the videos that have been released about it, but he ended up, the police officer ended up shooting the motorist, and a lot of people got very, very concerned. What do I do if I'm stopped by a police officer? And I got two interesting emails this week asking essentially the same question. And what they said was, and I'm paraphrasing this because they said kind of the same thing. They've been looking online, looking for ways, tips on how to deal with a police officer when they've been stopped in their car carrying their lawfully carried concealed weapon. And they both said the same thing. There seems to be a lot of conflicting information out there. Can you please shed some light on this and give us some ideas? Okay, be happy to. I've been stopped a number of times. I'm not going to admit how many. I bet I've been stopped a number of times, almost always, by the way, on a very loud, very fast motorcycle. I'm not proud of that, but it happened. And each time I handled it the same way, and each time the police officers always thank me for my professionalism and my thoughtfulness. And here's what it comes down to. Now, we're going to talk about states where there's no duty to inform the officer. If you have a duty to inform the officer, things change a little bit. But let's talk about those states where you have no duty to inform the officer. And what I tell my students is, I want you to step back and think about what you would be doing in that officer's shoes. Now, contrary to popular belief, police officers are human beings. I know that's going to come as a shock to a certain segment of the population out there, but they are. I've known a lot of them. I have some relatives who are police officers, and they have the same sort of range of personalities, the same sort of range of competencies that any worker in any job would have. So when you're getting stopped, you may be stopped by that 15-year experienced professional who's done this many times before. He's run across a lot of people with legally concealed handguns. He knows how to handle it. He's cool, he's calm, he's collected. Or you may run into that fellow who just got out of the academy, who is very, very nervous because he hasn't done very many of these stops before. And he's really not sure what to do because he wants to go home without any holes in him that night. Or you maybe find the lady who's somewhere in the middle, who she's done quite a few stops, but she's not entirely comfortable with it. Maybe she's had a bad day. Her stomach doesn't hurt because her stomach hurts because she got a bad meal at the local diner where the cops all go to eat. A whole range of personalities and motivations and everything else that you might run into. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. And the reason I think it's important because it sort of dictates how you comport yourself. What I want to do is I wanted to make it as easy and as non-threatening for the officer as possible. Now, when the officer stops you, the chances are that he's going, or she is going to run your plate, and the plate's going to come back and say, the person who is registered owner of this vehicle has a concealed handgun license. Now, this is probably going to happen almost universally around the country, unless you're not in your home state. If you're in a different state driving around, that information may not come up because the agencies may not share it in a timely enough manner for the officer to get that information on his or her computer screen. But if you're in your own state, chances are the officer is going to know before he or she stops you that you have a concealed handgun license. So what I do is I pull over. I make sure that I carry my license in an easily accessible spot. I'm not going to sort of do this and kind of maneuver around and make the officer more nervous because it looks like I'm doing something furtive in the car. I carry my wallet in a place where it can be easily retrieved. I pull it out. My license and my concealed handgun license are right on top of each other. I pull them both out with my driver's license on top, and I roll down the window and keep my hands on the steering wheel. When the officer comes up, does the preliminary thing, I say, yes, sir, here's my license. I hand him my license and my concealed handgun license. Now, there's something really important here. Do not say, I have a gun. In fact, don't use the word gun at all because, again, we go back to thinking about what he or she is thinking. And when they hear the word gun, that's a threat to them. Don't use the word gun. Just hand them your license and your concealed handgun permit and let them ask the questions. Now, they may ask you where it is and tell them, well, it's on my right hip at about 4 o'clock. Don't reach back to show them. Tell them it's on my right hip about 3 o'clock. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. And how would you like me to proceed? And usually, and in fact, almost universally, I've been told, you don't touch yours, I don't touch mine. And I say, okay, good deal. We're okay. And that's pretty much been the end of it. The important thing here is don't say, I have a gun. Just hand him your license, let him or her ask the question. Now, if you're in a requirement to inform state, you have to take things a little more carefully. Again, I would still get out my license and my concealed handgun permit or license or whatever it's called in your jurisdiction, hand it to them and said, I am carrying my licensed firearm. How would you like to proceed? And again, keep your hands in plain sight, keep them on the wheel, except for when you're handing him or her your licenses, and then let him tell you what to do. Don't reach back and show them where it is. Even if they ask you where it is, keep your hands on the wheel and describe it. And of course, always ask them, how would you like me to proceed? That tells them that they're still in charge, which is an important thing for a police officer. And it tells you that you are cooperating with them, that you understand that this can be a serious situation, and that you are doing everything that you can to make sure that it goes well. Again, this is nothing, there are no real hard and fast rules in here, but keeping in mind what the police officer is thinking, keeping in mind that you may get that overzealous one that wants to pull you out of the car and take your gun for their safety. Let them do it. Don't resist. Don't do any of that. Go along with them. And if you feel that maybe they were unprofessional, you can always have a discussion with their supervisor later. Don't do it on the side of the road. Again, if you are in one of those duty to inform states, make sure you check your state statutes and see if there's anything specific that they require. Being pleasant, being professional goes a long way with not just police officers, but everybody in this world. And that's why I tell my students that police officers are human beings too. The same things that work for me and you and the person at the subway will probably work for him or her if you keep their needs and their fears and their concerns in mind. And that's what I've got to say on that. Again, the reason that you see so many different recommendations for what to do is simply because there are so many different people out there doing that job, and they all want slightly different things. So keep that in mind. Anyway, so that's how to deal with police when you've been stopped and you're carrying your lawfully concealed handgun. I want to talk just a moment here about premium membership here at Personal Defense Network. Now, I've told you about all the free newsletter that over 300,000 people are subscribed to right now. But there's also a membership side here at Personal Defense Network, and despite all the free stuff, all the great free stuff that you find on the public side, on the membership side, there's even more. There are full-length videos, exclusive access to things like classes that are coming up, and you can get access to the premium membership for only $39.95 a year. Oh, well, wait a minute. What am I thinking of? It's not $39.95 a year. Because if you sign up for premium membership here at Personal Defense Network and you use the code GRANT10, that's GRANT10 at checkout, you'll get your first year of premium membership here at Personal Defense Network for only $10. And that's like 72% off or something like that. It's a great deal. There are a lot of people who are members here, premium members at Personal Defense Network, thousands and thousands of people, and they found great value at the full price. And now you can get it for only $10 a month for your first year, or excuse me, $10 for your first year, not a month. What am I thinking? It's $10 for your first year. What a great deal. That's less than $1 a month. It's a wonderful deal. It gives you a chance to try out premium membership. And I think if you're like so many of our other subscribers, you'll find that when it comes to renew, that you'll eagerly do it because of all the great information. Now, I've been a premium member since membership was initiated several years back. And, I haven't seen everything on the membership side of the site because there's just a lot of stuff there, a lot of great information too. So premium membership here at Personal Defense Network for only $10 for your first year if you use the code GRANT10, GRANT, numbers 1 and 0 at checkout. First year for only $10. Great deal. All right, so that's premium membership here. I got an interesting question about, two interesting questions actually that I want to talk about. And the first one that comes up is a question about prescription shooting glasses. Now, Roger writes, and he's talking about, I'm having trouble with my eyesight. I can't see my sights anymore. And I'm thinking about getting special prescription shooting glasses so that I can continue to practice my defensive shooting skills. Do you have any recommendations? Do you have prescription shooting glasses? And do you have any recommendations on what I should get and where I should go? Okay. Yeah, as you know, I wear glasses. I don't wear prescription shooting glasses. And there are a couple of reasons for it. Now, when we talk about prescription shooting glasses, what we're talking about are glasses that are cut so that the focus point occurs at the end of your arm. So if I've got my gun here and I've got it extended out, the focus point, instead of being like here where I read, would be out about here, which is where the front side of my gun would be. Now, some people will have the entire glass cut for that. In fact, these glasses are cut at about that distance so I can see the computer screen when I'm doing training talk here. Or sometimes they'll even go to the extent of having bifocals cut into the upper part of the glasses. So the lower part is their distance prescription, so they can see out here. And then the upper part, when they tilt their head down, is the prescription so that they can see at the end of their hands. I'm not a fan of doing that. And I'll be honest with you. I considered doing that once a long time ago, about probably 15 years ago. I considered having that done. And then I stepped back and analyzed what I was asking my eyes to do, and more importantly, analyze what I needed to do in a defensive shooting incident. And the reality is that, especially if I've got the funky ones with the bifocals on top, they look weird, and most people aren't going to wear them as normal wear in public. But even if you did, there's going to come that point in time when maybe your glasses get knocked off, or maybe it's night and you get up because you heard a loud noise and you knock your glasses off the nightstand and they get under the bed. Yes, it's happened to me. That's why I know these things happen. I actually stepped on a pair not too long ago and destroyed them. But you get up, you knock your glasses off the nightstand, all of a sudden you don't have your glasses to put on, your special shooting glasses, and there's a guy at the end of your hallway. Now what do? You don't have your special shooting glasses. This is why I'm not a big fan of these things, because yes, they make it possible to shoot technically better on the range, but if they aren't with you all the time, if you don't have them on 24/7, there's a better than reasonable chance that you could be caught without them when you actually need to use your defensive handgun. Instead, what I prefer to do is to practice with my normal prescription, which means, yeah, my sights are fuzzy. What I do is I adopt a target focus. And if you've taken a class from me, or maybe even you've taken a class from Rob Pincus, we always start out with a target focus, simply bringing the gun into and parallel with our line of sight, focused on the target. And for about probably 90% of the shooting situations that you'll be asked to solve, that's going to do the trick. And if you haven't done it before, get with a good instructor who understands how to do it, and have them show you. It's, believe it or not, most people under most circumstances really don't need to use their sights to get good, solid center chest hits at plausible defensive distances. If you're in a situation where you need more precision than that affords, and you still don't have your special eyeglasses, or have eyeglasses cut for it, you can still have a target focus and align your sights on the target. Now, will they be as good as if you were able to focus on the sights? Not quite, but a lot of people find that they're almost as good, and occasionally I run into that person who finds that they're actually a little better shooting with a target focus with their sights aligned just like they normally do and superimposed on the target. If you wear bifocals and you have prescription lenses, no, I don't think it's a good idea to have special prescription shooting glasses made. Now, if you're, for instance, a high-power competitor or something like that, where something other than defensive shooting, then sure, go ahead, get glasses cut for that sport. It's another piece of sporting equipment like the jacket you wear and all that other stuff that you can use. But for defensive use, your normal glasses adapt to what you need to do instead of relying on an artificial aid that you might not always have. So that's my answer about prescription shooting glasses. And interesting enough, by the way, this question comes up almost every class I teach, and almost every class I teach, I show those 2 or 3 people in the class these techniques, and their eyes open up and they, wow, I didn't even realize you could do that. Yes, you can do that. All right. So the other question I got was a fellow by the name, and I think his name is Barry. Yeah, Barry. That's a name you don't hear very much anymore. Barry asks, he said, okay, well, no. He's talking about his and hers guns. Now, he said his wife, he's had his concealed carry permit for quite a while, and his wife is just getting hers, or has gotten hers, and she's now looking at guns. And he's pushing her to get a gun like his so that they have uh, uh, ammunition and magazine compatibility. And he goes on about that. He says he thinks it's important to have magazine compatibility in case they're in a shootout and one of them needs a magazine. They can swap magazines. She, on the other hand, has found a gun that she likes that doesn't use the same magazines, and it may not even be the same caliber. I'm a little unclear about that. And and she thinks that that's the one she should get. And he's asking me to sort of break the tie. Okay. I've been married long enough. I think I can do this without getting anybody into trouble. Okay. The gun that your wife is going to carry for her own personal defense needs to be her gun. It needs to fit her hand. It needs to be a gun that she is comfortable using. It needs to be a reliable gun. It needs to be an efficient gun. In other words, it needs to have the least amount of things to do to get the gun into an operable condition, either or into a storage condition after shooting. In other words, minimum of safeties, decoctors, all that kind of stuff. It needs to be reliable, needs to be efficient, and most importantly, it needs to fit her hand. Now, if the gun that she's looking at fits all that criteria, that's the one that she should get, regardless of whether it shares magazines with yours. And I know that's gonna make him mad, but regardless of whether it shares magazines with yours. The idea that you're going to get into this sort of firefight where you need multiple magazines and one person is going to run out and you're going to throw a magazine to them, that's the stuff of Hollywood. Yeah, it happens in the war pictures. It happens in the Lethal Weapons series of films, but those aren't reality. That's just not how things happen. She should carry a spare magazine, very certainly. You should carry a spare magazine, very certainly. Whether those spare magazines fit each other's gun, I think, is way down on the list of importance. I really do. In fact, it's so far down there that I don't even consider it. My wife and I. Now, my wife is a concealed carrier, has been for decades now, and she's a firearms instructor. She teaches the concealed handgun license course here in our state. She carries a different gun than I do. Now, they both happen, when I'm carrying an auto-loading pistol, they both happen to be 9mm. We happen to use the same ammunition, but the magazines are completely different because they're two completely different brands of guns. My wife carries a Glock, I carry a Steyr, and they do not interchange at all. I don't worry about that because she carries a spare magazine and I carry a spare magazine, and we both know that the chances of even needing one reload, are slim to none. And needing multiple reloads, particularly a resupply from somebody across the room, again, that only happens in the movies. If she's going to carry a gun, it needs to be her gun. It needs to fit her, it needs to be reliable, it needs to be efficient. Let her pick it. If it's not the same one you have, so be it. Be happy for her. In fact, if you want to do something nice, get her a gift certificate to the gun store so she can go and buy it herself. And maybe a nice dinner afterwards. Just saying. Again, I've been married for 30 plus years. I understand how this works. All right. So, Barry, I think it was. I hope that answers the question. I hope that doesn't upset you too much, that I didn't take your side. But I don't think it's really all that necessary. All right. And there's a question here about what clothes to wear at the range when practicing. And this is a little odd because this is not something we normally think about. But the fellow says, I work during the week. I have a suit on and I wear my suit all the time. And it occurs to me that with my suit shoes, dress shoes, with my dress shoes that he wears with his suit, are different than the shoes that I wear when I'm not working. So he wants to know, when he goes to the range, should he occasionally dress in a suit and a tie and a shirt and put on his dress shoes when practicing, because he knows that there's a difference between what he wears? Certainly. Yeah, I think you should. If there is enough difference between what you wear on your off time and what you wear when you're at work, which keep in mind is 40 or 50 or for some people 60 hours a week, then you need to practice under those conditions. That's part of realistic practice, is practicing as much as you can under the conditions where you actually are likely to use that defensive firearm. And if that means that you're going to wear different shoes or you're going to wear different clothing and that changes where and how you carry it, by all means, go to the range and practice that. Now, if you show up to the range in a suit and dress shoes, of course, a lot of people are probably going to laugh at you. That's okay. Don't worry about that. But you should be practicing under realistic conditions, and that includes the kind of clothing that you're likely to wear when you actually need to use that gun. So yes, I would suggest that you do that. Use an old suit. I mean, don't risk damage to a good suit. Maybe an old pair of shoes if you've got them that are similar to what you're wearing. I wouldn't go in an absolutely brand new good suit, because things happen. You know, there's sharp edges, all kinds of stuff, staining. But definitely wear the kind of stuff that you would wear when you're in your normal work attire. I hope that helps. Hey, I see that Rob Pincus, the executive director here at Personal Defense Network, is with us. It looks like he's at are you at a mall, Rob? Is that where you are?
I am in a mall. No, I am at a emergency operations center, like planning sections and operations and communications. And if things go crazy with the election, Republican National Convention, I think this is where they run Earth from. So,
oh yeah.
The Olympics, when the Olympics were in British Columbia, this was the U.S. Contingent Emergency Operations Center was here because I'm really close to the Canadian border.
I have been in that very room where you are sitting.
You have been, yes. You were here for the instructor development course in 2010.
Yeah, been a long time. So the spring training tour officially ends tomorrow. Is that correct?
Well, sort of. I have one class at the request of a government office down actually in Oregon where you are on Tuesday. So that's going to be my last course of this training tour trip. And then I've got some downtime scheduled and some family time. And I'll kind of take my time with the wife driving back down to Colorado for a few days and going back east and goofing around. I've got one class in California in August, but that's off the tour. That'll be a non-tour class. So this is the last course that was an open enrollment course, is the instructor development that finishes up tomorrow here in Washington. And then the one course next week in Oregon. And then that's a wrap for the 2016 training tour. I think there's a couple of other instructors who also are finishing up this week or this weekend. I do have a class. I'm sorry. I forgot. I have a class with Mike Hughes with Next Level Training, the CERT pistol guys, on Saturday. So that'll be the last open enrollment class, will be Saturday for the tour.
Okay, great. Successful tour this year. Lots of classes going on all over the place, not just with you, but I taught a bunch of other people did too, right?
Yeah, we had 10 instructors this year participating in the tour. We had a record number of classes offered. Record attendance overall for the tour. I know personally for IC Training Company, May was a overall record month. It was our busiest month ever since we've been tracking that kind of stuff. And June was the busiest June that we've had also. So it's been an incredible year for training, for the Personal Defense Network training tour. We had a lot of sponsors. We had some sponsors that have been around forever, like Crossbreed. We have a lot of returning sponsors, and we also added a couple of new sponsors this year, which was great as well. So just all the way around, like in every, I think we had the best T-shirts this year. I mean, I think in every metric you can look at. Maybe not the best wrap design, but it looked good, I thought. So we really did well, and I was really happy and proud of it. Finishing up strong here in the Pacific Northwest, and we're already planning 2017.
Okay, before we get to 2017, let's talk for just a second, because I want to give some love to our sponsors. The sponsors make this thing go around, and so if you would, just kind of run down a list of the sponsors that we had on the tour this year.
So CMMG rifles, of course, a lot of our military law enforcement stuff, and then all of our carbine classes, our defensive rifle classes. We had Viridian Green Laser. We had Breakthrough Clean, but lubricant as well as the solvent. A lot of people don't realize they added cleaning kits and lubricant to their awesome solvent that they came out on the market with a couple years ago, Breakthrough. Viridian Green Lasers, they added some flashlight and illuminators, IR illuminators this year, but using like the XL5 is the go-to one that I use. Their lasers are instant on technology. They combine with a lot of manufacturer holsters, including Crossbreed holsters. I mentioned them a second ago. They're one of our longtime sponsors. Tactical Walls was one of our new sponsors. Clandestine staging units, built-in shelves, books, bookcases, any kind of shelving unit, mirrors, clocks. They have all kinds of very cool, very kind of stylish and classy, well-built ways for you to stage defensive firearms around your home that are not going to be accessible unless someone knows how to get into them and knows where they are. We had next level training, the SIRT pistols. We talked about shot indicating resetting trigger training pistols that are so popular throughout the NRA training community and all over the training. A lot of competition guys use them, developed by Mike Hughes. Of course, they're based up here. We'll be with them this weekend. We had Springfield Armory, of course, the XD pistols. I carry the XDS. I've actually been spending a lot of time with the Mod 2 5-inch tactical all through the spring. Great gun. It's a great full-size gun for home defense. People looking for a full-size gun, maybe for a duty pistol. That gun's been great. Of course, a lot of people have seen the videos that we've done with Rob Latham, the Worlds Collide series. That's been a lot of fun. That's Springfield Armory there. iMarksman, the training system, video interactive training system that works with the SIRT pistols as well as a lot of other laser trainers. They've been a sponsor throughout the tour. They've been a sponsor, I think, with us 3 years off and on throughout the history of the PDN Training Tour. Gander Mountain Academy they joined back up with us this year. They were with us for a couple years, took a year off. Gander Mountain Academy, of course, we have certified instructors that teach all over the country at their 6 locations. So I was able to hit 4 of those locations on the tour this year. That was great. We're going to hit, actually, maybe I hit all 5. I hit 5. They were Wichita and Texas. I did teach at Texas earlier this year, but it wasn't part of the tour. And then Wichita, Kansas, which is where I'll be later this fall. We're going to do something down there. And then the final sponsor, I think I hit them all, was Benchmade Knives. So Benchmade, of course, Benchmade Knives, I've been close with them for a long time. They've got some great everyday knives, and they've got some great defensive tools as well. And this was their 2nd year on the tour with us. So, I've lost all sorts of power. So what's interesting is, in order to get power, I actually have to get up and move, because if you're in the emergency operations center and you're not moving, well, there's no reason to let the batteries drain down. I assume it's battery powered. I don't know.
That was funny. Okay, that may be a first. So,
And I'm back.
Yeah, we're back. Okay, lots of good stuff on the tour. A lot of great sponsors, and of course, always happy that an Oregon company, Benchmade, is an Oregon company that gets on the tour. That's wonderful news, because I go way back with Benchmade to their very, very earliest factory here in Oregon. And so great company. So I'm glad they were on the tour this year.
For sure. Great guys. And Next Level Training, obviously, is a Washington company. So I think we have like Washington, Minnesota, Oregon, Missouri, 2 companies in Missouri, Florida, Miami with Breakthrough, Virginia with Tactical Walls. iMarksman is back east somewhere. I think they're I want to say like New Jersey or New York. So we've definitely got a good nationwide spread on our classes, on our instructors, and our sponsors.
So already starting to plan the 2017 tour. Anything interesting that you want to say about that? Anything cool going on for 2017?
I think we might get up. It looks like we might be able to get up into Maine, which would be great. We've gone to New Hampshire every year, Vermont some years, Massachusetts most years, but I haven't gotten all the way up into Maine. So, of course, I went to Alaska a couple years ago. I'm up in Washington every year. This was the first year that the tour went to California. Of course, I teach in California almost every year, but this was the first time that we actually drove the tour truck in. So that was part of this leg right before coming up here. That was great. And I think we might get into Maine next year as adding another new state. The Southwest has always been sort of neglected. The Texas, New Mexico, Arizona on the tour, just because there's only 4 months, and to hit as many places as we do in the Midwest and up in New England, it's hard to get down into the Texas, New Mexico, Arizona area. But at least we got California in this year. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to make it down into one of the other states in the Southwest this next year or not, but it does look like we'll be able to add at least one new state up in New England.
Cool. That would be great. I know there are a lot of people in Maine who I don't think anybody really gets up ever to teach in Maine, and I know there are a lot of people up there who would love to get good training coming to Maine. And, Maine is kind of out of the way. We don't think about it very much, and so that would be a wonderful thing for the people up there. And I know quite a few people who will probably sign up for those classes. Tour's done. You've been to a lot of states. During the tour, lots of stuff has been going on nationally. Of course, we've got the craziness of convention season is upon us. One this week, then one next week. All of this stuff, and we've had some attacks that have happened against police officers and against private citizens around the world. What are some of the takeaways, some of the lessons that you would like to share with people from all of this stuff that's been going on? Maybe some stuff that we really haven't talked about yet.
Well, honestly, it's good and bad that there really isn't anything new here, right? We've known for a long time that evil exists, and you could be visited by evil, and you have an obligation to be prepared to defend yourself from that evil. When you start seeing, we've been preaching counter ambush training at IC Training Company, the CFS program, for, a solid, well-documented 15 years. And of course, that was the centerpiece of a lot of the training we're doing for the military special operations community, was the counter ambush nature of our close quarters programs that we ran in the 2000s. In the civilian world, in the private training world, there's a lot of people that want to go out to the range and be the best shooter they can be, or get the fastest time on some drill that they can do exactly the same way time and time and time again. And I've kind of dismissed a lot of that approach, and I've explained why, and we've talked about why counter ambush, reacting, integrating your natural reactions, and then responding as well as you need to, or as well as you can, in a realistic situation. Why that's such a superior training method, I believe. And it's obviously exhibited in so many of the PDN contributors and so much of the PDN material. So obviously a lot more people are accepting that approach and embracing it. But for a long time, a lot of people resisted it. Unfortunately, a lot of the people who've resisted it are, the hobbyists on the private training side, the people that really just want to go out and shoot well. They aren't really thinking about application or thinking about performance. And unfortunately, a lot of our armed professionals, the people that see themselves as being on balance, they put the uniform on, they pick up their gun, they put on the badge, or they fly off overseas, and I'm going to go do this job, and I'm sort of going to be aware, and I'm going to be on balance, I'm going to take the fight to the enemy, that kind of thing. Well, we know that law enforcement officers get caught off guard a lot. And what's been drawn into a very clear, sharp image over the last few weeks is this idea that when law enforcement officers are targeted and ambushed and attacked, when people attempt to assassinate our police officers in the dark, when you're ambushed just like that, it was really not planned, but it was very dramatic. When this happens, you need to be able to respond quickly after recovering from the natural reactions that the body goes through when you're caught off guard. And when you're standing out there with a bunch of protesters, trying to get along, trying to maintain peace, trying to let people express themselves in a peaceful way, like was happening in Dallas, and in the midst of that, it's not two guys fighting over there, or someone that you're talking to that's aggressive or drunk, that is having a bad day, that you're really kind of on balance, ready for them if they attack you to defend yourself. It's a shot fired at you from up there, like you're, standing around in a, military environment overseas, and some sniper takes a shot at your compound. That's a completely different set of reactions. The responses are eventually going to be the same, but fighting back into an on-balance position, fighting back to where you can sort of try to regain the initiative from something that was completely out of left field. This is something that our law enforcement officers have always had to deal with, but it really gets driven home much more starkly and much more crisply when we see it like this, when we see it as a targeted assassination attempt, a planned attack, not just on the mall and then the police go to the mall, but on the police wherever they happen to be. So this acknowledgement of counter ambush training's importance, and not just as a term or a catchphrase, but really, what does it mean? Well, it means learning to integrate these natural reactions and learning to integrate the processing of information that's new and novel immediately prior to or concurrently with the execution of your complex motor skill. So not being, not doing the same drill, not doing, El Presidente over and over and over and over again, knowing exactly what's going to happen, exactly what you're going to do. Of course you're going to get better at it. And of course you can learn to excel at it and feel good about your performance at it. But if we change the position and range and angle of the targets every time you turn around, that's harder. And that's okay. It should be harder, because when the bad guy attacks you, he didn't tell you where he was going to be. And when someone tries to assassinate a law enforcement officer who's just out there doing something else, that officer may be incredibly relaxed in terms of his potential response. Very unlike going to an active shooter call, or going to a domestic violence call, or going to a shots fired call, where you're much more on balance. I think in the private sector, maybe one of the biggest lessons, unfortunately, we've seen in the last week or two is that, again, we've been saying for a long time that maybe open carry isn't the most brilliant idea. Not only in terms of the obvious political fallout and ramifications if you're trying to be an activist with it, but just from a defensive tactical point of view, right? The guy down in Texas who thought it would be a good idea to carry his rifle openly during the peaceful protest, as soon as shots started getting fired, he didn't obviously dissuade anybody. He didn't deter anyone from committing that crime because he happened to have a rifle on his shoulder, nor did he swing that rifle off his shoulder and respond to the guy that was attacking the population there, the police officers and potentially anybody else out in the crowd. What he did was hand over his rifle and say, hey, I'm not the bad guy, and here, if you need this, I brought one. And he got his face plastered all over earth as a potential suspect to thank him for loaning the rifle to the police, which is the best way we can articulate that. So I think it's just some of the silliness of, I'm going to carry a gun and it's going to deter crime. We're seeing police officers with vests and badges and public authority and training, and obviously firearms, getting attacked on purpose by evil people meaning to do them harm. The idea that you're going to, carry your 9mm whatever in your whatever holster on your hip under with a t-shirt tucked in behind it, showing everybody at the Walmart or the convenience store, and somehow deter crime, doesn't make a lot of sense. So we've seen a couple of things: the importance of counter ambush training and what it really means. And we've also seen the non-effectiveness of open carry very well exemplified, combined with sort of the silliness and the drama it causes. I mean, you realize, like, there was a whole county, the governor of Ohio had to come out and say, no, we are not going to suspend the right to carry guns openly because it's in our Constitution. The fact that he had to say that, the only reason he had to say that was because there were a lot of people who predicted accurately, obviously, that there were going to be people who thought it would be a good idea to carry firearms in some form of protest or activist movement, not even about gun rights. These are people who are just carrying guns while they're talking about other things in the middle of a very heated national moment. And should that right be restricted? Absolutely not. Carrying the gun around in that space this week, is that really the brightest idea? I don't think so. So we usually don't talk too much about politics, but that's a tactical defensive area that overlaps with the politics of the country as well. If people, we know this, we've seen it happen in other places, in other states around the country, if people sort of act foolishly with the right to carry a firearm, then that right's going to be restricted for everyone. And that's unfortunate. And that does affect my ability to protect myself and other people's ability to protect themselves when our rights get restricted. So we have to think long and hard about how we act with guns, I think, as responsible firearms owners. Those are the two big takeaways from me this last couple weeks.
I'd have to agree with you. And we've got about 5 minutes left here. And I want to touch on something because you mentioned this, talking about counter ambush training and the need for counter ambush training, and how most of the defensive shooting world looks at this from a hobbyist perspective, from an athletic skill perspective. You're finishing up tomorrow 5 days of training new instructors in counter ambush methodology and concepts. How are these new instructors, how are they taking to the material? Are they understanding it, and have there really been any sort of eye-opening things happening with them as they're presented with this counter ambush shooting methodology?
Obviously, as a prerequisite to take this 5-day class, you have to have been a student in the combat focused shooting program. So a lot of people have done the counter ambush distance education course. The courses that are online now available at PDN Academy, the PDN Training Academy online. Those distance education courses are a highly recommended course to take before coming in here, because the concepts that are in that course are really inherent to a lot of the explanations for why we teach what we teach in the CFS program. So a lot of these guys are very familiar with that. And of course, the reason that you were here with that class in 2010 is because the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office, the agency here that runs this facility in the county that we're in up here, I guess it's the most northwest county in the continental United States. They have been using combat focused shooting and integrating into their training programs for their SWAT team, their patrol officers, and their corrections guys for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years now. And that first instructor development course that they hosted here in 2010 was the one you were at. This instructor development course is for some other agencies in the region, as well as the next crop of instructors that they're adding. So most of these guys, if they've started with this agency, they, for many, many years now, and since they started training as law enforcement officers, have been well steeped in the concepts of counter ambush training. So for those guys, it really is digging deep. So the questions are great. It's going to the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th level. And the way it works at the agency, there may be 10 instructors that work for the work firearms, but only 6 of them are certified CFS instructors. So if you happen to go to the range on a day when one of the guys isn't a certified instructor, you might be doing a drill that guy can't explain very well. Well, that's sort of the standard, right? When we say people approach it from an isolated athletic skill base, that hobbyist base, it's not really meant to be pejorative as much as it is to say, if you're just worried about your shooting skill and not the application of your shooting skill, then your training model might be missing the mark. So these guys have been through some drills that some of them had some really good questions about because they just never got that kind of 3rd level, 4th level deep answer. And they did it, like it worked on the range. That's what everybody did. The senior guys are, everybody's doing it. That's sort of how you go with the flow. But this course has definitely helped them to understand how to better answer the questions for the next guys that come through when the initial, here's what we're going to do next, guys, doesn't quite click or make sense. And when you talk about counter ambush and you talk about not being the best shooter you can be on the range on a sunny day against a piece of paper, a lot of guys kind of, it just doesn't sit well with them. Why wouldn't they want to be the best thing they could be on the range? And of course, the answer is we're not practicing for the range. So it doesn't matter how well you can do this. If you can do it a 1/4 of a second faster, but it requires the perfect choreography of that rehearsed drill, then that 1/4 of a second doesn't actually mean anything, regardless of what the internet tells you.
A lot of people getting their training information from YouTube these days, unfortunately. So we're just about out of time. And so first of all, I want to thank you for taking time out of your evening to sit down and chat with us for just a little bit about the tour and about all the other stuff. And of course, people can always find you here on PDN. They can always find you at icetraining.us. Where else?
We're going to be doing a live event with Mike Hughes on Saturday. So Saturday evening, we're going to be doing our monthly PDN live, and we're going to be talking about developing defensive shooting skills. And obviously, the CERT pistols. Mike's a USPSA Grandmaster. He's competed all over the world. People know him from the Top Shot show. So he brings a lot of those same skill set development ideas that come out of the static world or the predictable choreographed sport world. And we're going to talk about applying them to the personal defense world and some of the counter ambush stuff we're talking about. So that'll be great on Saturday evening. And then other than that, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. You can find me out there. The class right next door is getting ready to do their final presentations for the week before we get into tomorrow morning. We'll go back out to the range, and then tomorrow is test day. So it's just about 7 o'clock out here on the West Coast. I'm sure we've got at least another hour. We tend to do about 60 hours worth of work in a 5-day course for the CFS instructor development. So this course is far from over. And I head back over there. Appreciate you having me on here. As always, I've only been on the show a couple times since you've started it, but let me take this opportunity to thank you for what you're doing. Training Talk as a vision for PDN was definitely a small idea that we had high hopes for, and I think you're really fulfilling those hopes and meeting the goals we've set for the show. So thank you for your work. I know Julie's been on a couple times. It's great to see her on there, and the way you're addressing the topics and making people more aware of the things that we're covering in the short videos and articles at PDN is really appreciated. And a lot of people on the tour have been mentioning that they appreciate the show as well. So that's been great.
Well, great. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate the kind words. And very, very quickly, 6 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow or on Saturday night?
You know better than to ask me. There'll be links on the Facebook, though.
Okay, fine.
It'll be Saturday night, and there'll be links on the social media for sure.
Okay. All right, great. Rob, thanks a lot. Thanks for being on, and I'll let you get back to your students. And folks, we're just about out of time. Thank you very much for tuning into Training Talk. And don't forget, our next show is going to be August the 4th. That's the first Thursday of August, and it will be 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And my special guest next show is going to be Caleb Causey of Lone Star Medics, and we're going to talk about all the stuff that you need to know to take care of yourself and your loved ones and innocent people in the event that they are suffering from severe trauma because of an attack or because of an accident or any other of those things that can happen. So again, that's August 4th, the first Thursday of August, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here at Personal Defense Network. Of course, there'll be all kinds of links and announcements about it. Be sure to catch that show, and be sure to catch Rob's live show this Saturday, talking about training with the CERT folks. And it'll be here at Personal Defense Network, and you can find the link for it. And be sure to check that, because that's probably going to be a really good show. See you next time. Again, thanks for tuning in, and stay safe.